This is a practice run. Hello, I'm Jacob Waltermeyer, and I'll be talking to you today about some of the rules of wrestling. So, wrestling is one of the oldest sports known to man. It was featured in the original Olympic Games, from what we know, and really, wrestling hasn't changed that much since then, besides some rule changes and a little bit of change in technique. So, I'm going to start off by talking about how a match works. So, matches in high school are 3 2-minute periods, while matches in college start with a 3-minute period and then 2 2-minute periods. So at the beginning of a match, the opponents will line up in the small ring in the center, which has a rectangular box inside of it, with a green line on one short side and a red line on the other. The opponent marked red by the referee before the game will stand with his foot in the middle of that line, and the other opponent will line up on doing the same thing on the opposite side. The two will shake hands and then the match begins. All matches begin in a position called neutral, which is when both opponents are basically standing there, so neither of them has an advantage. They're both upright on their feet. So from neutral, both opponents should try to make their way towards a takedown, which is worth 2 points. Now, a takedown is defined by one opponent having full control over the other, and the opponent that is on the bottom at this point must have 4 points of contact, which is usually 2 hands and 2 legs on the ground. Now, after a takedown, if the person on the bottom makes it out of that position and goes back to neutral, it's called an escape, and it is awarded 1 point. Now, let's say the opponent on the bottom can't get an escape. The person on the top should be working towards what's called a pin. Now, a pin is the ultimate goal of any wrestling match, and the opponent that gets pinned loses the match. Now, a pin is defined by the opponent having their back completely flat on the mat, but this is usually determined by the 2 shoulder blades, and the shoulder blades must be flat against the mat. That determines the pin. Now, let's say the guy on top is working towards a pin, and he's able to get his opponent on his back, but he can't quite pin him. This brings in something called near fall. So with near fall, if you're not pinned, so both of your shoulder blades aren't flat, but you're on your back, the referee will start counting from 1 to 2, and then at 3, at the third count, the opponent on top is awarded 1 point. Once the referee gets to 4, he's awarded 2 points, and finally, once he gets to 5, the person on top is awarded 3 points, and that's the most you can get off of that near fall. Now, from near fall, you can pin him, but let's say he doesn't pin him. Let's say they go back to normal top and bottom right after a takedown happens. Something can happen called a reversal. Now, a reversal is exactly what it sounds like. It's when the top and the bottom guy change positions. Basically, the top guy ends up on the bottom guy ends up on the top. And the person that was on the bottom that went to the top is then awarded 2 points for the reversal. Now, this brings me to another way to win a match. It's called a tech fall. And a tech fall is the most humiliating thing that you can face in wrestling. So a tech fall is basically wrestling's version of a mercy rule. And it occurs when one opponent is winning by 15 or more points, and it immediately ends the match. Now, let's go back to the match structure. At the end of the first period, there will be a coin flip. There's green on one side and red on the other. Also, it corresponds to the color that they wear on their ankle, determined by the ref before the game. If whatever color it lands on, that person can decide to either take the top, take the bottom, go neutral, where he loses 1 point, or he can defer it. And then what happens in a deferral is he will get to pick into the third period if it comes to that, and the other guy is forced to pick during the second period. Now, whoever picks during the second period, the other person gets to pick at the end of the second period going into the third period. There is overtime in wrestling. If it's tied at the end of a match, it goes into a sudden death 1-minute neutral overtime. And if nobody scores points during that overtime, it goes into the first double overtime. And the same thing happens like at the end of a period where coins flipped at the beginning. Whoever color it is can decide to either go to top or bottom. And this, they'll keep switching who gets to pick back and forth until somebody finally scores a point and ends a sudden death. There are penalties. I'm not going to go over them because there's quite a few of them, but usually with a penalty, the first offense is usually a warning, unless it's usually can injure or endanger the life of the opponent. The second time you do it, the opponent gets a point. Usually the third, maybe fourth time you do it, you get disqualified from the match. Finally, I'll talk about equipment. So equipment in a wrestling match is supposed to be pretty standard. All people must wear wrestling shoes, which are different than your average tennis shoe or other sports shoe. You must wear a singlet, which I'm sure most of you are familiar with. It's the thing they all get made fun of for, like the straps and the really tight shorts. And then finally, you must wear a headgear in college and high school, but not necessarily in Olympic wrestling. Girls have a little bit of a special rule, and it's honestly the only special rule they usually get besides pulling hair. They are allowed to wear undershirts underneath the singlet. That's all I got for you. Thank you.